Here. Actually, it's been a while since I was in Montreal, although many people don't realize it, but my parents are originally from Montreal. My father was a English Canadian from Montreal, and my mother was a French Canadian from Outremont. So I was told it was a very interesting wedding. My father was a geologist, and so I grew up in Calgary and came down for graduate school at the University of North Carolina, taught at Michigan State, worked with the automotive industry, and now teach at North Carolina State. And as the Bank of America Distinguished Chair, I hope my salary next paycheck goes through okay. So this is indeed very interesting times for everyone. We've survived the first quarter. Earnings maybe aren't as bad as expected. We're seeing an incredible, huge investment going on right now into the U.S. economy and in the Canadian economy and in many of the other economies in the world. Nothing like this in the history of the global economy, just a single largest infusion of dollars into the global economy in global history. Swine flu now has complicated things, and I guess that's good if you're Roche or GSK, you're selling antivirals. But in general, it does seem like there's a lot of uncertainty, and people are really asking, how is this going to impact the world, the field of procurement, our industry? And I would have to say that most people really don't know. And I've spoken to many economists, and they're completely and utterly baffled because they have never seen anything like this before in economic history. And as such, I would have to say I believe that many people are sort of playing it by ear and trying different things and see what works. But just as a general rule of thumb, we are faced with a period of very deep and uncertainty in terms of what's going to happen. One of the great things in my position is I do get to interact and speak with a lot of organizations. At NC State, we created a supply chain consortium of companies. They include companies in oil and gas, in discrete parts manufacturing, and services, and energy, pharmaceuticals, banking, airlines. All of these companies really, you think, well, they're very diverse. What do they have in common? And they really do have one thing in common, which is they're after good people. And as part of this consortium, we work very closely with these companies. We have the MBA and the undergraduate students work with them on projects as part of their course curriculum. And so we're very much exposed to the types of challenges and the types of issues that these companies face. And very often the students do a great job of really helping them to understand and map out the problems and come up with some very good solutions. I'm going to spend a little time today, first of all, talking about just what we're seeing generally with respect to the global economy. What are some of the characteristics of things that are happening, and maybe make a couple of predictions based on my personal view of what I've heard. We've also got some data to show you. Many of you may have completed a survey that we launched with this group. We're going to show you the results of your responses and compare those to a peer group of procurement professionals in the UK, the US, and in Brazil. And there are some very interesting differences there that I'll point out in terms of how the global economy is being impacted by this situation and how people are reacting. And I'll talk a little bit about strategic sourcing and the downturn. And I don't believe there's a lot of really marked differences in terms of what we want to be doing, but there are some things we need to be thinking about, especially with relation to our suppliers and how we work with our suppliers. And then we'll have some breakout discussions following the break. And we'll ask each table to kind of discuss the issues, consider the data, and really the data is the data. So it very much is fodder for your interpretation, for your discussion, and we're looking to you to come up with some ideas of what your thoughts are what you're doing in your companies, and perhaps come to some conclusions on that. So, and by the way, if there are questions at any point, feel free to jump in, and we can take questions as we go, as opposed to waiting till the very end. Well, in general, what are we seeing? I think originally the forecast was for 2.7% decline in U.S. GDP. First quarter came in at 6.1 annualized. So it's much deeper than originally thought, and they're hoping that things will improve somewhat. And certainly in Canada, I don't believe the recession has been quite as challenging. In the U.S., I think it's been impacted more than just about any other country. 15 million jobs lost, just an incredible number in the U.S. They're huge stimulus, over $3 trillion, to some extent is driving the stock market. We're seeing improvements in the stock market. With that much cash going into the economy, can you wonder, stocks are going to go up. The only question is, will that plane get off and leave beyond the 10-foot level, or will it kind of come back to the ground again? We are seeing major structural changes, particularly in automotive. Chrysler declared this morning they're going to bankruptcy. We're probably going to end up with one or maybe two North American car companies at the end of all this, which, there's overcapacity. It's maybe not a bad thing. And certainly in the banking sector, I think we're going to see consolidation there as well. I think in general, the financial institutions in Canada are much more secure, much more stable. I think that government regulation of the number of banks, the limit on the number of banks in Canada has actually proven to be a very wise move in the longer run. There are some signs in my mind that even though GDP will decline, and people are saying in 2010 things will turn around, from a procurement perspective and from a supply chain perspective, I think we're going to see early signs here that inflation may well be a problem. If you look at what's happening, a lot of the major capital projects in energy, in mining and other commodity areas are being shut down. And you put two and two together and you say, well, if the economy comes back and there's not enough supply of oil and commodities, prices will go up. Not to mention the fact that government spending will continue to drive the U.S. dollar lower as we continue to borrow. You put two and two together, I tell you what, that sure sounds like inflation to me. So I really think we're going to see energy prices go up, commodities go up, and in the end we're going to see inflation hopefully come back, not at too great a rate, but to some extent. Well, what does this mean for people in procurement? Well, of course, the shotgun reaction from companies is, we'll take down our cost. We want you to take down costs. We're going to cut spending. We're going to cut travel. We're going to cut training. All the things that enable people to do their job, you're going to cut. And furthermore, we're going to focus on working capital. And CFOs will almost always say, well, the first easy thing to do is to extend our payable terms, right, and to slash our inventory. So inventory has been slashed to record low levels, which is now they're getting to the point where they're going to have to start production again. All major capital projects that I've heard of, which required longer payback periods, have been delayed or deferred. And what is happening effectively is that this is driving down the supply chain. In the paper the other day, InBev, which recently purchased Anheuser-Busch, a big, formerly a private beer company, moved all of their payables to 120 days for suppliers. And people are saying, well, we're going to delay payment, we're going to put the onus on our suppliers, and we're going to force them to wait for their payment. At a time when there's limits on commercial paper, when lines of credit are drying up, when banks are not lending. I mean, I tell you, I